Are you your parents' retirement fund too? Hey friends, welcome to First Gen Money, a place for all things money and lifestyle from a millennial's perspective. So in today's video, we're gonna talk about you and how you can support your parents and how to find out if you're your parents' retirement fund. How do we deal with the fact that we have our own financial goals? We have our own retirement goals, and then we might also have and be responsible for the well-being of our parents when they hit retirement age. What do we do here? The reality is we can't say, that's not my concern. It's their retirement, they'll figure it out. It's just not gonna work that way, right? They're our parents, and at least I will never be alive and see my parents struggle and not support them. So that's how I feel, and I think it's really important when you put that in perspective that you do want to help. It's just now a matter of how do you juggle all these different priorities. Now, for me personally, talking about money with my parents is not a big deal. We talk about money all the time. Now, when we talk about anything that has to do with money in the future and their future, things get a little bit murky. So when I broach the topic on retirement, my parents kind of brush it off and let me know that they're gonna be okay and they don't really need my help, like I should do my own thing. But I got some cues to kind of gauge how your parents are doing financially now, but also what their retirement funds, if any, might look like. And I think it's very important to start asking questions now that they're not in retirement, like, what debts do you have? Like, what's going on financially? Like, really get under the hood of their money. What are some things that you might not be aware of that might impact how they're able to live in retirement? And so asking those questions now is gonna put yourself and them in a better situation when it comes time to retire. I'm not saying you need to make your parents feel shitty about where they are in their retirement. We shouldn't do that, because if we do, then that's it. Like, you're messing up any kind of future money conversation you want to have with your parents. But I'm saying find out about certain things, ask certain questions. And the first thing I would find out about is, what's the deal with their house, right? Do they own a house, or are they just renting? If they own a house, like, how much is in that mortgage? What is the deal with the house? You want to find out about this house because you want to find out how much is left on the mortgage, how many more years is left to pay, and what the interest rate is. A lot of times we think about our house as our retirement fund. I mean, I know when I spoke to my dad about his retirement, he was like, well, I'll always have this house and we can sell it and that's it. That's my retirement fund. But that might not be the case if your parents took out a HELOC or, a loan on the amount that they had paid off. So understanding what the situation of the house is helps you understand if it is, something that you could sell for money in retirement. But solely depending on this house as your retirement fund is not a smart thing to do. I was reading a study by Zillow that talked about how really putting all your eggs in your housing basket can cause a lot of stress and trouble in the future if we're thinking about maybe when they sell it. So if they, decide to sell their home at a time when everybody's selling their home and they don't get as much value for that house as it's worth, that's one way that it can't turn out the way that you expect it. Another way was talking about environmental changes. What happens when climate change becomes a more visible issue and these very warm places are no longer suitable for living. People might be migrating because of climate change. So climate change migration might impact whether people want to move to where you own your house or not. You have to take all of that into consideration. Like, what could you expect for the house that your parents own now? And is that realistic? Is that a realistic option to consider as a portion in their retirement plan? The next thing you want to find out about is their retirement accounts, right? Do they have a retirement account? Have they ever had access to a retirement account? Do they have money in this retirement account? What does that look like? And I get it if you're not super comfortable talking numbers with your parents, but it's kind of easy to gauge whether or not they had access to a retirement account or have access to a retirement account by just looking at where they worked. For instance, my dad works at a Fortune 500 company that I can make the safe assumption, and I already know, but if I didn't know, I can make the safe assumption that he has access to a 401k and other benefits. Now, if I look at my mother and I think about her career trajectory, I don't see where she could have had access to a retirement account. So that will give you like the basics, like, okay, they might have some, or they don't have anything. Look at what your parents have done for work in the past. Look at their employers. Do a little digging if you can't straight up and ask your parents. If they do have access to a 401k and you do feel comfortable asking them about how they're investing in it, you can straight up ask them and find out if they have a good amount of money in there. Once you're done assessing whether they had access to a 401k or not, you want to think about the Roth IRA. Do they even know, like, what the heck is a Roth IRA? If they didn't have access to a 401k and you know your parent and you're like, yeah, they definitely don't have a Roth IRA, then you can make that safe assumption. I think I know my mom would not have opened a Roth IRA on her own, and I don't know who else would have opened it up in her name. So I can say, no, not available. I know we're doing a lot of assuming here, but if you're not comfortable talking about money things with your parents, you are going to be assuming, and you know what happens when we assume. So the best thing I can tell you is start getting comfortable having these conversations. Yeah, it could lead to argument, but for their benefit. So we can assume all we want, but we won't know the facts. And if you are somebody who is comfortable talking about money with your parents, then by all means, ask for specific numbers, find out how they've been investing their retirement accounts. Like, you know, what's been going on during COVID? Have they looked at their accounts? Have they gotten scared and sold off things? Find out, get those numbers, because without that, you really don't know where you're starting from. The last question you want to ask your parents to kind of gauge their financial situation and readiness for retirement is, what is the debt situation like? Do they owe people money? And if so, who do they owe? And try to aim for a repayment before their retirement date, because nobody wants to go into retirement with debt. Okay, actually I have one last thing that you should find out about your parents, and that's their spending habits. What and how are they spending their money? Because this can give us kind of a understanding, or at least to start with, how they're going to be spending in retirement. If you know your parents are lavish spenders, love to eat out every night, love to go to luxury places, I don't know, then you might realize that their spending is a lot higher than, I don't know, if they didn't do those things. Okay, so I just covered some questions that you should ask your parents or try to gauge from your parents before they enter retirement. Now I want to talk about what you can do to help prepare to be your parents' retirement fund. The first thing you can do is figure out your housing situation. I know when my parents get older and no longer can live on their own, I'm not going to send them to a nursing home just because they would never let me live that down. But, and I just wouldn't want to. So when I think about what kind of house I'm gonna get, for my forever home and the home that I might be in when my parents come to that age, I want to make sure it's got enough space to hold both of them and for me to live comfortably with my own family. So thinking about future situations and what you might want to buy, taking into consideration who might be living with you, I think is a good place to start. And I'm not alone with this. I know I asked the Latinas Get Money community, and a lot of people said, my housing. I'm going to find a house that is a mother-daughter, has a back unit, and they'll live in the back unit. And I love this idea. I grew up in a multi-generational household, and that's normal for me. So it's normal to live with your abuelita, to live with, your tios. I lived for for most of my upbringing with my abuelita and my tío Ronald, and we had no issues. They had the basement level, they had their own apartment setup, and we were upstairs. And I want that similar setup for my family. I want to be able to offer a home for mine when they get to that stage in their life. Is it an option to maybe have your parents move to a different country? And that one's tough because I don't want to have to take a 6-hour flight to go see my parents. But maybe in their earlier retirement days, that could make sense. I could go for an entire summer if I wanted to. When I'm financially independent, looking at lower cost of living countries, lower cost of living cities could be an option for you to consider, for you to maybe even think about buying an apartment in that country, or just calculating how much the cost of living is there, and maybe you don't even need to buy anything. But that's an option. If housing and moving and all that stuff is out of the question, then you might want to consider getting the long-term care insurance. And I had to Google this one a little bit, but basically it is what it sounds like. It is insurance to help you cover, or the person retiring, cover any long-term care that they'll need in their retirement age. So this could be at the nursing home, or if you're going to have an aide in the house, covering the aide's salary or things like that, because it is really expensive to have somebody full-time, and even just to go to a nursing home. I'm going to put a breakdown on the cost up here that I found, because I was just like, wow. Like with other insurance policies, it is based on your age, your gender, and I think also your health, how much your policy is going to cost. So, it might not be the most affordable option. Then, of course, the best thing that you can do right now is to increase your own retirement contributions. When you contribute more than you need to right now, you will have less to worry about later. There is this term called coast fire that means you have hit a certain amount of money in your retirement account that you don't need to keep contributing unless you want to. So I hope to hit coast fire for myself and really just financial independence, so that I'm already taken care of, and anything that I do extra is for supporting my parents when they come to that age. Think about really adding more money into your own retirement accounts now, because you have time on your side and you can ride those waves that your parents might not be able to. I want to read some of the responses on the Latinas Get Money community because they were just really good. A couple of people shared that they opened a retirement account on their parents' behalf. I also opened a Roth IRA for my mom a few weeks ago, and they have been contributing on their behalf, so that's a good option. And then somebody mentioned investing in a brokerage account for whatever needs that they'll have. How are you preparing to be your parents' retirement fund? Let me know in the comments. Let us know in the Latinas Get Money community if you're not a part of it. I will leave a link to it down below. But I will see you in my next video.